Welcome to this short introduction to the CROSS system. The CROSS UI runs in a normal browser. I'm using Chrome, but other browsers are available. This is the dashboard, which is your entry point into CROSS. We can see the available modules here. For convenience, they're also available in a quick launch menu on the left side of the screen, which you will always be able to access. On the dashboard screen, as well as the modules, we have user and version information. Items have been inserted into the workbook and the user history. Let's go into the first of the modules, service. In this case, we've selected an MPLS core network service. We can see the service links and the MDP points it passes through. You can toggle visibility of different layers from this menu. So we could look at optical cables. We could add trenches. We could add an MPLS network. Let's now look at the locality module. And the locality we want to look at is San Francisco. So we can select it, and this will take us straight to the locality module, as you can see. Now here we have San Francisco, and we can see it in the Geo Viewer on the bottom right. Now this is a typical setup for a CROSS module. There's the main activity pane here, then there's an editor pane and a geo pane. If we expand this locality, we can do it by clicking on the little triangles, or we can just go to the top and say expand all. We can see that there's a fair bit of equipment here. So in San Francisco, there's a building, a room, a rack, and in that rack is an MPLS PE and an ODF. Now, one of the most useful modules in CROSS is something called Insight. So if we click on San Francisco and go to Insight, now in the Insight module, the central managed object, or it's here the current node, is in this case San Francisco, because that's what we've selected. This module really gives you a 360-degree view of everything surrounding the central managed object. So we can see the routed links, terminated links, the parents, it doesn't have one, and its children. And we can see there's one building. If we click on that, that becomes a central managed object. The San Francisco locality moves across it to the parent, and there's a new child, which is a room. If we do that again, we see there's a rack in that room, and that rack has an ODF and a network element. Now, if we click on the ODF, it has a card. Click on the card, we can see we're really getting down towards the bottom of the tree here. We only have terminated links and no routed links. So let's go back up. One of the other things you can do is you can select a link and focus on that. So if we select this link between San Francisco and Los Angeles, that becomes a central managed object, and it's now showing current link instead of current node. Now, horizontally within this layer for this service, we can see the start node and the end node, but we can also see its consumers and the providers. So the consumers are the services which use this link, and the providers are those services which this link uses. The other thing we can do now is we can take this central object and we can look at it as a circuit. And this switches us over to the circuit module. Again, expand all. And if you look at the window, the geo window here, you can see now we're seeing every little twist and turn of the link and how it's routed. We can look at optical cables and we can look at trenches and switch on different layers. Another thing we can do is if we select, for example, this trench here, we can focus on that. And then we can see the consumers that run over that trench. And there's the optical cable from Los Angeles to Bakersfield, running through the Bakersfield trench. Returning to our original circuit, we can choose schema. This gives us a schema view of the circuit, and it shows us all the layers from the service at the top to the trench at the bottom. It also shows us all the equipment, including active equipment and passive equipment. All of these are live. So if you click on, for example, this, the GeoView will focus on that element. If we click on this, we focus in on the network element. So let's go back to the service, the end-to-end service. Another thing that Cross does is manage alarms and work out root cause. So if we click on this service and select circuit, set as root, we can go into routing and we can say, create an alarm on the link. Now, if we go into the service impact analysis module, we can see that alarm and its impacted services. There are no sub-alarms because it's the top level alarm. Now let's go back to that circuit view. And the schema, and create alarm at a lower level, in this case the optical cable. So we'll set that as root, turn to routing, set the alarm, and go back to the service impact analysis module. Now we can see the alarm has changed to the optical cable. The impacted services are still the same, but there's a sub-alarm, which was that first alarm that we created. We then select the top level circuit again, expand all, and return to the schema. We can see those alarms shown. There's the top level service alarm, and there's that optical cable alarm. And the system understands, because this is a lower level alarm than this one, this is likely to be the root cause of this, and it shows it in the SIA module. Turning to locality, it's possible to see the different network technologies and layers in the system. And let's make the GeoView bigger. So we can switch these on and off. If we don't want to see the MPLS, we can switch it off or switch it back on again. We can see trenches and optical cables at a physical layer, and we could see GPON or whatever else was built into the system. So Cross manages across multiple layers, and it gives you the flexibility to see the connections between those layers in the GeoView, but also in the locality. Now I've switched over to a different network, a GPON network, to show you how we patch active equipment to the underlying passive optical infrastructure. So here we have a main distribution point. We're going to go into the patching module. Now this gives a simple left-right view and allows you to patch between them. And here we can see some patching already done. Now to create a patch, you select the start point and the end point. Then you just say create patch cord, and that's done. Cross can also be used for managing mobile networks. Here we can see an example of a mobile base station with 3 sectors. We can see the feeding trenches and cables, and if we want to, we can select the coverage, the radio coverage for this area. We can expand the tree to see the equipment, the sectors. And we can switch to locality view to get a fuller view of all the equipment. Here we can see the antennae, and the rack with the base station equipment in it.